sponsoring this next incredible keynote we have lined up. Ken Stanfield did a great job on the last panel. And Seth, the whole team at Solid is really a valued member of PCIA. We thank them for supporting this great keynote speaker we have coming up next. Bill Smith, who is the president of AT&T Network Operations. He's responsible for all network operations across the country's global service footprint. The company's one of the largest figures in this company, and we're so thrilled that he's here. He controls a checkbook of nearly $20 billion. And so he's a very popular figure in the hallway as he makes his way back and forth. He has a team of about 100,000 employees, so this is somebody who knows how to delegate. But he came here, we're so grateful for that. He is in charge of an organization that performs planning and engineering and construction, provisioning and maintenance for the wireless and wireline networks, and focus on wireline today. He's responsible for AT&T's network health. He began his career back with Bell South, reflecting on his days back there, and has had numerous positions in technology, operations, marketing, and public policy. Back at Bell South, he served as a chief technology officer and responsible for the overall technology direction for Bell South's core infrastructure. So this is a person who knows a little something about wireless infrastructure. Best of all, he's a super guy, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in telecom. Let's give a warm welcome to Bill Smith.
Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to be with you today and talk a little bit about what we're doing with at AT&T and all the things going on. I think you would agree that if anybody in our industry is bored, it's their own fault, because there's enough going on to keep you excited every day. And so what I'd like to do this morning is spend a little bit of time talking with you about what we've got going on. We'll just kind of hit some high spots, and I'm definitely going to leave some time for Q&A at the end. But I'd kind of like to hit one up front. I've gotten a lot of questions this morning from people asking about the DirecTV deal that we announced, and is that going to divert capital or divert our plans? And I can't see that happening at all. If anything, if you look at the deal, we have agreed to expand some broadband coverage, both wired and wireless. That's good for infrastructure build. And if you think about it, one of the advantages or one of the motivations for us to want to put these two companies together is the fact that more and more people are looking at content on their mobile device. Well, what does that mean? That means we're going to have more traffic on the mobile network. What does that mean? We're going to need more mobile capacity. So I don't think anybody in this room should be concerned that this is a left turn by AT&T or anything with respect to our investment in our network, but I'll be glad to answer some questions about that a little bit later on if you'd like. What I wanted to do is just kind of hit some high spots, and I feel like this chart is a bit like telling Noah about the flood, as the old saying goes. You folks live it every day, I live it every day. This is kind of my treadmill chart, if you will. And for those of you that go for the annual physical and get on the treadmill, you know what I mean. It's, every minute or so, it gets steeper and faster. And that's kind of what I feel like every day. So, we set records year after year after year. In fact, it was interesting, I was thinking about it this morning. I've gotten several emails over the last few weeks announcing that this event was an all-time new record over the previous all-time record. So, for example, the Super Bowl this year set an all-time record on busy hour traffic. Then there were a couple other events, the most recent of which was the Coachella Music Festival, and it set a new record that was 30% or so higher than the Super Bowl on busy hour traffic, and twice of what the 2013 level was. Then about 2 days later, I got another email from my team saying, guess what? The Kentucky Derby just set a new record, and it's another 20% higher than what Coachella was. So it just seems like the demand for capacity here is insatiable. We've been seeing on average at the overall network level somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% year-over-year growth. Peggy Johnson will be up after me, but she said this morning that Qualcomm specialists kind of predict maybe continued 100% year-over-year growth levels. So while on the one hand, I'm excited about that. On the other hand, it kind of makes me tired because I'm the guy that's got to build all that capacity to make sure it happens. But the bottom line, certainly with your partnership, but the bottom line is we don't see any end in sight to this. So I'd like to talk with you a little bit about some of the things that we're doing to deal with this. First of all, we announced a project a couple of years ago called Velocity IP. And it was basically part of our longer term plan to transform our network from the legacy TDM, predominantly wired infrastructure, to one that is all IP and has a strong wireless component to it. Now, sometimes people talk about wireless networks as though they're standalone. Wired and wireless networks work hand in hand, as you well know. So this is kind of a comprehensive view of the network and what we're doing to change it to an all IP network. I'll come back to that on my final slide. But we made this announcement a couple of years ago, and we're well on the way to completing this project. I won't say that we're done, we're certainly not, but I think we can kind of see the finish line from this first phase. So the first part is expanding our LTE coverage. We're currently at approximately 280 million pops so far, and we have committed to be to 300 million pops by the end of the year, and that by and large is going to be by the end of summer. So we're moving very effectively at meeting that objective. The next item is a term we call densification, which is simply putting more cell site capacity, either macro or small cell or DAS, in the network, because as we all know, spectrum is one of the scarce resources that we're dealing with. And you know, there's a lot of issues, as you know, around ultimately trying to get some more capacity, more spectrum in play. But right now, it's really a matter of trying to make the most use of what you've got and plan very carefully on what you need to supplement that. And so densification is one of the projects we've got in that regard. That involves building new macro sites, and you're planning on building somewhere in the 1,500 to 3,000 macro sites per year for the foreseeable future. And that's one of the areas where I think this organization's helping a lot with getting through some of the barriers we have in terms of getting permitting and some of the other things that are required to make that happen. Certainly distributed antenna systems are a big part of that, as well as small cells, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I'm really proud of what we've done, particularly with the distributed antenna systems. We've stood up an organization a couple of years ago that focused exclusively on getting into these venues, whether it's hotels, convention centers, business parks, particularly sporting arenas. And you know, those are the tough ones. I mentioned the new record we set at Kentucky Derby. Those are tough for us because basically Churchill Downs is a once a year big event. It's a huge event once a year, but the rest of the year our macro network can handle that capacity. The problem is you put a couple 100,000 people in that concentrated space for 2 days and it gets to be a real challenge. But our distributed antenna team has done a great job in helping us solve some of those areas. We continue to knock those down. Everything from, you know, football stadiums, college campuses, ski resort areas, those get to have their particular set of challenges, but we're doing a lot of good work there. And then we talked about small cells and how important they are. I think, you know, your agenda, I read through the agenda, it looked like it's been a great conference. In fact, I wish I'd been able to be with you for more of it, because I think you've hit a number of the key topics here. But small cells are very important to us in this solution. I view it a little bit more of a rifle shot technique, so that you can go in, particularly where you've got concentrated areas with special needs, whether it's an office building or a mall area or something along those lines. Small cells make a really good solution for that. One of the keys we're looking at, as you can see on the bottom, is really supporting all the technologies. I'll touch on that again in a moment. So let's look at a little bit more of the detail of what we're doing in some specific areas. One of the areas that I'm pretty proud of, our technical team really got us out front on, is putting tower-mounted radios. And so basically what we do is we take the radio up to the top of the tower instead of the bottom, and that typically gains us approximately 3 dB. both on the transmit and receive side. So as you can see, that's a pretty big difference. It's interesting too to me. I was in Puerto Rico recently looking at a tower where we just completed some work, and you could look at the old technologies with all the coax riser cables going up the tower, and you could see the new technologies with the fiber going up the tower. It became pretty obvious that the loadings on the tower and everything else associated with that are vastly improved with this new technology. So that's a big deal for us, and I think we've kind of pioneered that technology. We've also architected our core network for better performance. So we put more and more access nodes throughout our network. You know, I never dreamed that I'd see the day when the speed of light became an impairment or potentially a roadblock in our industry. In fact, I worked on a project many years ago that was a fiber-based project, and some of my colleagues made a speed limit sign for my office that said speed limit 186,000 miles per second, which, as you know, is the speed of light. I never dreamed that that would ever actually be a barrier, but we're actually seeing the point now where it's important when you're looking at millisecond response times for applications. It's important to be able to get nodes built around your network so the round-trip delay time is reduced, and so we've done some of that with our core. We've also done something that I'm really pleased with that many of you may be aware of on some of our new cell site construction. We've had a project called Cell Site of the Future, where we basically pre-manufacture a cell site in various sizes. We put all the equipment inside in a controlled environment, so it's very high quality as opposed to field build. We've got state-of-the-art heating and cooling capabilities that are very environmentally safe, as well as backup emergency generators. And we can take that whole structure out and put it on a site with a very high quality installation, very quick response. So a lot of things going on in the fundamental tower side of our business that are helping us meet our objectives. On the top right side, you can see carrier aggregation. That's probably one of the single most important things that I see as far as the future performance of our network. As you know, in many cases now, we're having to put different parts of spectrum, different bands of spectrum together to try and solve the needs of our customer. Carrier aggregation allows us to do that, so we use different bands of spectrum and make it work seamlessly to deliver the capacity and the performance to our customer they're looking for. That's something we've launched. We actually launched LTE Advanced late last year. You'll hear more about our plans in that regard coming up later on this year, but that's very important work that we have well underway. The bottom left side of the chart, we've touched on small cells, but that's a key part of our overall program. In fact, Gordon Mansfield, one of our key research and technology folks, leads the Small Cell Forum and has been just a driving force working with industry on small cells. They're very efficient, as you can imagine. I do like the fact that it's kind of a surgical rifle shot approach as a solution to capacity needs. We've got deployments in over 30 states already, both indoor and outdoor. In fact, the Small Cell Forum did a study that showed 4 small cells placed within a macro cell area could actually increase the total capacity of that area by 56%. So you can imagine how valuable that is for us as we go in and try and surgically deal with some of these spots of capacity needs. So small cells are a key part of our initiative, our overall plan. In fact, our planners developed a tool that's kind of they call it a HARP tool that is designed to deal with the HETNet or heterogeneous network planning, and it actually will help us pinpoint exactly the spots where we need to put in additional small cell capacity to offload the macro network. So that's a big deal for us. The bottom right-hand side is something that I think is fascinating, it's exciting, and that's self-optimizing networks. You know, historically, it has taken a lot of time to optimize the network, whether it's tilts or power configurations, etc. This is something that generally would take 6 to 12 months for engineers to go out and re-optimize your network. Now, if you think about it, the needs of the network are changing almost moment by moment. You know, I like to use the example of a downtown high-rise environment. When you've got, during normal business hours, you have all the people up in the building sitting at their desks doing their jobs. In the mornings, or particularly at lunch hour, they all drain out onto the street. That's a very different need for the wireless network to accommodate. Same way in the rush hour commutes, or if there's a traffic accident that causes traffic patterns to change, the needs of the wireless network change. Unfortunately, historically, we've not been able to re-optimize that quickly. What SON does is literally in our network today, SON is doing 500,000 optimizations a day in our network. 500,000 a day, real time. It's looking on 15-minute increments and it's re-optimizing our network. So that's been a vast improvement in the performance of our network. And frankly, I think some of the capacity that we hope to wring out of the network as we go forward is around control plane kind of capabilities like that. So the ability to put control plane management functionality in that better utilizes that core resource, I think is critical. And SON is part of the way we do that. There's a SON 2.0 capability coming along that does a variety of additional things like dynamic interference management, can actually change the tilt of antennas dynamically to mitigate interference. There's something called a mass event handling tool. So if you think about your average football stadium, what happens before the game? Everybody's in the parking lot tailgating, right? Then everybody moves into the stadium. Then everybody leaves the stadium. Very changing situation for our wireless network to accommodate that. So that's one of the things that SON 2.0 will help us do, is deal with those mass events. And finally, there's a capability that does inter-carrier balancing, load balancing, that will help us move traffic between carriers to both balance the load and then put traffic on the carrier that's best suited for the nature of that. So SON is a big deal for us going forward, and we're very both excited about the capabilities it will bring to our network, and also we're investing a lot of energy and resources in furthering that work. Last but certainly not least is the network virtualization, also known as Domain 2.0, also known as user-defined network cloud. That's basically a broad initiative that we have to move from special purpose hardware elements in our network to virtualized capability running on essentially white box hardware. So what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is if you look throughout our network, there are literally dozens of special purpose pieces of equipment that do this particular function. For whether it's the wireless network or the wireline network, doesn't matter. There are many, many, many special purpose pieces of equipment in our network. If you look at it, it doesn't have to be that way. It's completely possible for us to take the functionality that those pieces of equipment provide, develop a software capability, in other words, virtualize that functionality, and then run it on a white box or a non-specialized piece of equipment. We think that's going to provide a lot of cost savings for us going forward. So one of the things for this group, and I know you guys are very sensitive to capital budgets and plans that we have, a lot of the things that we look to get efficiencies in our capital program going forward are around this initiative. That doesn't mean we build less cell towers or small cells, et cetera, but it does mean that we get more and more efficient with some of the core elements in our network, because we think there's a way to virtualize them and run them on off-the-shelf or white box hardware, as opposed to these very specialized platforms and pieces of equipment. So those are major initiatives that we have on the network side of the house. I'll just touch quickly. I think innovation, you know, I've spent my career on the network and technology side of the house for the most part, with a few stints in product management and other places, but by and large, we tend to think of innovation as being a technology-based initiative. But the fact of the matter is, innovation can come in a lot of areas, and my hat's off to my colleagues in the marketing and product side of the house for some of the things that they've done with AT&T's product. The mobile share plan has been amazing. It's been an amazing success. And you think about it, most of us, You know, if I ask for a show of hands in this room, I suspect that 100% of you have 2 mobile devices, and many of you, I have 2 in my pocket at the moment, much less in my briefcase and everything else. So the ability to treat all those devices on a common bucket of capacity makes a lot of sense. A lot of other things around product enhancements, I won't take a lot of time to go through those here, but I think my colleagues on the marketing side of the house have done a great job on some of our offers here. The upper right-hand side, the next offer, has been another big success, and it has to do with the handsets. And you know, it's been a bit of a frustration for me for some time that most of our customers, when they went into one of our retail stores and walked out with that new smartphone, they had no idea that that was a $500 to $700 device they had in their hand. No idea that they had that value. And until they lost it or broke it, and then typically if it was a friend of mine, I'd get a phone call saying, Bill, you're not gonna believe this. I lost my phone and they want $500 to replace it. I think this program has been a great one because it's helped people understand not only the value of the handset, but it's also given them the ability to basically stay refreshed on a going forward basis. And I think it's been a tremendous success for us, and I'm very proud of my colleagues for coming up with that one. The lower left-hand side of the chart, we're excited about the Cricket AO combination. I think you probably saw, although some of our announcements over this past weekend with the formal launch were a little bit overshadowed by the DirecTV announcement. But the bottom line is we're fully in business now under the Cricket brand, and I'm excited about that because I think it allows us to do a better job on serving the value-conscious part of the market and doing it with a brand that can meet the special needs of that segment. So we think there's a lot of positives for both us and the consumer in that regard. And so we're excited now to be fully operational in the Cricket brand. On the bottom right-hand side, you know, we could spend all day, and I know you have talked a lot already about some of the things here, such as connected cars. You know, I think we've gotten virtually every major car deal in the world. I've been amazed at some of the ones we've been able to do with some of the European carriers. We may not have gotten all of them, but we've gotten the bulk of them. I think the upside here is just tremendous when we look at what's happening with the future of cars, and so we're extremely excited to be in that position. Wearable devices are a whole new area. I mean, you know, we've all dallied with it. I've got the new Samsung Fit Gear watch that I've had for about 3 or 4 weeks, and it's interesting to me on some of the things that it can track on my day-to-day activities and try and help me be more healthy with my activity levels on a daily basis. But this is just a starting point. I think everything from athletic systems to be able to very carefully monitor high-performance athletes to other systems that may be designed to monitor heart patients or people with a particular chronic illness. I think the sky's the limit with these devices. There are a number of things we have underway. Digital Life is one that we've launched that's a combination of a home security, home energy management, event detection, water sensors in case you get a leak in your home. There's a world of things we're opening up there, and I think that's just scratching the surface. If you look at some of the opportunities we have to help seniors stay in their homes more effectively, live independently. I have an 80-year-old mom that lives alone. The ability to monitor her well-being more effectively without being intrusive. Keep up with activities levels, is she moving around, etc. I think there are just so many things we can do, and you think about this in terms of the benefit of society. If you can keep a senior living independently in their home for a month, you can pay for the cost of these kind of technologies for several years. So there's a big opportunity there we're excited about it. You may have read some of the press coverage today about, we'll even help you lose your luggage, or find your luggage if it gets lost. So a lot of opportunity there going forward. I'd like to close by just issuing an appeal to this group because you are so supportive of the industry. You know, we're trying to make a big step toward the next generation of our network. And, you know, there's a lot of anxiety in some corners about things like retiring the legacy TDM network. And you know, you look at it compared to other industries, when jet aircraft came along, nobody said, well, you got to continue to fly a certain portion of your fleet with propeller-driven planes. Or when DVD players came along, nobody said, well, gee, a lot of people have VHS players at their homes and on top of their TV, so you got to continue to produce content that way. That didn't happen. We let the market sort that out. If I look at where I am in trying to make this transformation of our network from kind of legacy TDM to future IP, a lot of the opportunity for me to make that happen more quickly is getting the cost savings associated with retiring that legacy network. So we could certainly use your help in making sure that people realize that there's a lot more opportunity in moving toward the future than holding on to the past. So I just close by saying, you know, I think technology is inexorable. You know, you can try and guide and manage, but you can't control it. And things like the movement to wireless and IP networking, et cetera, just make sense. So we've got to make sure that our policies and regulatory strategies, I think, line up with that. So with that, let me close, and I'll be glad to take a couple of questions for the time we have left. Have microphones in the audience? Have one up front.
Wi-Fi on airplanes, are we going to see a big deployment of antenna from ground to air so that when I get on an airplane in the future and I have my AT&T phone will be as simple as Starbucks, I'll just seamlessly have Wi-Fi?
The current plan is to use ground-based systems for the Wi-Fi deployment that we announced. You know, one of the things that we're starting to look at, and bottom line, the whole DirecTV announcement brings a lot of work for our teams to do. There are a lot of questions that raise. One of the things is like, well, gee, is there an opportunity perhaps to use a satellite backup when you're in parts of the country? You know, I know as I use current aircraft Wi-Fi today, when you get out in the big square states out west, quite often you lose coverage for a while. So maybe there's an opportunity to use a satellite there, but we think that the ground-based systems still will have a lot of, will be the primary vehicle, and that's what we're focused on. Other questions? Yes, sir. It's really hard to see.
Hi, Jonathan Chopra from Evercore. I just had a question on the NFV, the network function virtualization. You guys made some very powerful comments about video and combining video and wireless networking. I was wondering if NFV would facilitate the ability to dynamically control the quality of the video streams that you deliver, so that you don't deliver a 1080p stream to a BlackBerry, or, well, who's got a BlackBerry? An iPhone, and you make sure that you deliver a high quality stream to a larger device, things like that. Thanks.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point, and that, I think, is facilitated by network function virtualization. There are some schemes, there are some capabilities today. Schemes kind of has a connotation to do that with some transcoding elements in the network, et cetera, because to your point, you don't want to deliver that high quality content throughout the network and then transcode it at the far edge for the device it's looking for. So, you know, I think there are a lot of opportunities to make more and more effective use of the network capacity using techniques such as that. So you're right on point. One last question, perhaps?
GM with Concordia, you mentioned earlier that you've never imagined that you would actually see 186,000 miles per second being the barrier. Right now we're at 80 megabit per second on the wireless side, on the LTE. You have about roughly 10 gigabit per second on the fiber line coming into the cell side. When do you think, or we're not going to hold we're not going to hold you to this answer, but when do you think, gut feeling, you're going to see 1 gigabit per second on the wireless side?
Oh, gee. You know, the question there is one of, are we talking hero experiments or practical day-to-day application? Frankly, I'll leave it to others to prognosticate some of those things. There are a lot of people, I won't name names, but there are people making some pretty bold statements on what they plan to do in the wireless arena now with speeds. And I think quite often they're quoting theoretical maximum capabilities. And I know in a lot of places where we turned up our LTE network, in the early days, I routinely got speed tests in the 60, 70 megabit per second range when we turned up. Now, as the network got loaded and more people came on, you got to more routine levels that we see today in the, in the upper teens. I don't really want to get into speculating when you'll see a gig in the labs or in practical reality. The question is, what's the customer need? I'll give you a case in point in our project that we've done in Austin, Texas, where we're taking fiber to the home with currently a capability of offering 300 meg per second. By the middle of this year, we'll be up to a gig. We actually have had some trouble calls from customers who are doing speed tests, and we go out and find out that they don't have a device in the home with an output on it capable of more than 100 meg. So they do a speed test and get 100 meg and call and say, wait a minute, I got a problem, I'm not getting 300 meg. Oh, it's because the PC got a 10100 Ethernet port and it's only capable of outputting at 100 meg. So I don't think we see the need today for those kind of things. I think the hero experiments are interesting, but we try and really design and build our network around the kind of day-to-day needs of the customer. I'm sure we'll see it at some point in time, but probably not in the near future. But with that, folks, I think my time is up. It's been a real pleasure being with you today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.